Hello, hello, hello. Happy White Witch Wednesday, everyone. We are nearing the end of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We're in chapter 16, and we're going to finish tomorrow, which is super exciting. Tomorrow, after I'm done reading, I'm going to drop you guys the, actually, I'll probably send an email. I'm going to give you guys the forms link so that you can go and take the forms test. I wrote it this morning. And like I said, it's mostly big ideas from the story. So there's nothing to study. It's just like, what do you remember from the story? Think of it kind of like a reading counts quiz. And my class, I've had one Flipgrid come in. Erin, you did amazing. And I'm looking forward to the next Flipgrids. And I'm kind of disappointed. I had opened it up what I thought for you guys to do comments, to write comments on there, but they only allow video comments, and that just takes up too much memory. So be sure to like when you watch a video, click on the heart, let them know that, give them some positive encouragement. So I turned off the video link, and you can just do likes, and we'll kind of go from there. So we'll all learn from one another, and excited to see what else is going to come up on the Flipgrid Teach the Teacher. What else is going on? Okay, so tomorrow, like I said, we'll finish the story, take your forms quiz right afterwards. Social studies test, chapter 8 is going to be Friday. You can take it anytime between the hours of 9 and 5. Last test of the school year. Woohoo! You don't want to miss the last Kahoot on Friday at 1 o'clock. It's for both classes. I just wrote that this morning as well. And super fun, random facts about things that I love, places that I love. Also, some questions about any core literature book that we read this year. I just kind of put a little bit of everything in there. So anybody could be on the scoreboard because it's literally a whole hodgepodge of random things. Lots of fun reveals too. You know how I love how the pictures, how they reveal. So you don't want to miss the Kahoot. So plan ahead for your test on Friday. Make sure it doesn't overlap with Kahoot. So start early enough so that you're done by 1, or plan on doing it after we do our final Kahoot. Also, my class, I sent out a sign-up genius for next Tuesday for dropping off final textbooks, instruments, Chromebooks, all the above. Please have your parents sign up for a time slot. Starts at 8:30 and ends at 10:15, I think it was, or 10:30. First come, first serve. So tell your parents to go on there. All right, let's get started. Chapter 16, what happened about the statues? I think we get to meet Rumblebuffin today. I'm excited. What an extraordinary place, cried Lucy. All those stone animals and people, too. It's like a museum. Hush, said Susan. Aslan's doing something. And he was, indeed. He had bounded up to the stone lion and breathed on him. Then, without waiting a moment, he whisked around, almost as if he had been a cat chasing his own tail, and breathed also on the stone dwarf, which, as you remember, was standing a few feet from the lion with his back to it. Then he pounced on a tall stone dryad, which stood beyond the dwarf, turned rapidly aside to deal with a stone rabbit on his right, and rushed on to 2 centaurs. But at that moment, Lucy said, "Oh, Susan, look at the lion." So Aslan's going up to all them, going, and breathing on them, and magic is happening. I expect you've seen someone put a lighted match to a bit of newspaper, which is propped up in a grate against an unlit fire. And for a second, nothing seems to have happened. And then you notice like a tiny streak of flame creeping along the edge of the newspaper. It was like that now. For a second after Aslan had breathed upon, the stone lion looked just the same. Then a tiny streak of gold began to run along his white marble back, and then it spread, then the color seemed to lick all over him as the flame licks all over a bit of paper. Then while his hindquarters were still obviously stone, the lion shook his mane, and all the heavy stone folds rippled into living hair. Then he opened a great red mouth, warm and living, and gave a prodigious yawn. And now his hind legs had come to life. He lifted one of them and scratched himself. I like that part. Having been stoned for a long time, he probably had some itches. Then, having caught sight of Aslan, he went bounding after him and frisking around him, whimpering with delight and jumping up to lick his face. Of course, the children's eyes turned to follow the lion, but the sight they saw was so wonderful that they soon forgot about him. Everywhere, the statues were coming to life. The courtyard looked no longer like a museum. It actually looked more like a zoo. Creatures were running after Aslan and dancing around him till he was almost hidden in the crowd. Instead of all that deadly white, the courtyard was now a blaze of colors, glossy chestnut sides of centaurs, indigo horns of unicorns, dazzling plumage of birds, reddy brown of foxes, dogs, and satyrs, yellow stockings and crimson hoods of the dwarves, and the birch girls in silver, and the beech girls in fresh, transparent green, and the larch girls in green so bright that it was almost yellow. And instead of the deadly silence, the whole place rang with the sound of happy roarings, brayings, yelpings, barkings, squealings, cooings, neighings, stampings, shouts, hurrahs, songs, and laughter. "Woo," said Susan in a different tone. "Look, is it safe?" Lucy looked and saw that Aslan had just breathed on the feet of the stone giant. And I love this image in my head. I picture him breathing on the feet and, this huge giant slowly, like the fire starts going up him and bringing him to life. "It's all right," shouted Aslan joyously. "Once the feet are put right, all the rest of them will follow." That wasn't exactly what I meant," whispered Susan to Lucy, but it was too late to do anything about it now, even if Aslan would have listened to her. The change was already creeping up the giant's legs. Now he was moving his feet, and a moment later he lifted the club off of his shoulder, rubbed his eyes, and said, "Bless me, I have been asleep. Now, where's that dratted little witch that was running around on the ground? Somewhere just by my feet, I think it was." But when everyone had shouted up to him to explain what had really happened, and when the giant had put his hand to his ear and got them to repeat it all again so that at last he understood, then he bowed down till his head was no further off than the top of a haystack, and he touched his cap repeatedly to Aslan, beaming all over his honest, ugly face. Giants of any sort are now so rare in England, and so few giants are good-tempered, that 10 to 1 you've never seen a giant when his face is beaming. It's a sight, worth looking at. So here's Rumble Buffin standing in the crowd of all the good side, happy, yelping, joyful. "Now for the inside of the house," said Aslan. "Look alive, everyone, upstairs, downstairs, and in the lady's chamber. Leave no corner unsearched. You never know where some poor prisoner may be concealed." And into the interior they all rushed, and for several minutes the whole of that dark, horrible, fusty old castle echoed with the opening of windows and with everyone's voices crying out at once, "Don't forget the dungeons! Give us a hand with this door! Oh, here's another little winding stair! Oh, I say, here's a poor kangaroo! Call Aslan! Phew, how it smells in here! Look out for trapdoors! Up here! There's a whole lot more on the landing." But the best of all was when Lucy came rushing upstairs, shouting out, "Aslan! Aslan! I found Mr. Tumnus! Oh, please come quick!" A moment later, Lucy and the little fawn were holding each other by both hands and dancing round and round for joy. The little chap was none the worse for having been a statue, and was, of course, very interested in all she had to tell him. But at last the ransacking of the witch's fortress was ended. The whole castle stood empty, with every door and window open, and the light and the sweet spring air flooding into all the dark and evil places which needed them so badly. The whole crowd of liberated statues surged back into the courtyard, and it was then that someone, Tumnus, I think, first said, "But how are we going to get out of here?" For Aslan had got in by a jump over the great gates, and they were still locked. "Oh, that'll be all right," said Aslan, and then rising up on his hind legs, he bawled up at the giant, "Hi, you up there! What's your name?" "Giant Rumblebuffin, if it pleases you, your honor," said the giant, once more touching his cap. "Well then, Giant Rumblebuffin," said Aslan. I love that name. "Just let us out of this, will you?" "Oh, certainly, your honor. It will be a pleasure," said Giant Rumblebuffin. "Stand well away from the gates, all you little ones." Then he strode to the gate himself, and bang, bang, bang went his huge club. If you ever watched the Flintstones, you know how they have those caveman clubs. The gates creaked at the first blow, cracked at the second, and shivered at the third. Then he tackled the towers on each side of them, and after a few minutes of crashing and thudding, both the towers and a good bit of the wall on each side went thundering down in a mass of hopeless rubble. And when the dust cleared, it was odd, standing in that dry, grim, stony yard, to see through the gap all the grass and the waving trees and the sparkling streams of the forest, and the blue hills beyond that, and beyond them, the sky. "Bloated if I ain't all muck and sweat," said the giant, puffing like the largest railway engine. "Comes out of being out of condition, I suppose. Neither of you young ladies has such a thing as a pocket handkerchie about you." "Well, yes, I have," said Lucy, standing on her tiptoes and holding up her handkerchief up as far as she could reach. Now picture Lucy's handkerchief to a huge giant must be like just teeny tiny. "Thank you, missy," said Giant Rumblebuffin, stooping down. Next moment, Lucy got rather a fright, for she found herself caught up in midair between the giant's finger and thumb. But just as she was getting near his face, he suddenly started, and then he put her gently back on the ground, muttering, "Bless me, I've picked up the little girl instead. Oh, I beg your pardon, missy. I thought you was the handkerchief." "No, no," said Lucy, laughing. "Here it is." This time he managed to get it, but it was only about the same size to him that a saccharin tablet would be to you, like an aspirin tablet or a vitamin would be to you, so that when she saw him solemnly rubbing it to and fro across his great red face, she said, "I'm afraid it's not much to use to you, Mr. Rebelbuffin." "Not at all, not at all," said the giant politely. "Never met a nicer handkerchief. So fine, so handy. So I don't even know how to describe it." "What a nice giant he is," said Lucy to Mr. Tumnus. "Oh, yes," replied the fawn. "All the Buffins always were. One of the most respected of all was the giant families in Narnia. Not very clever, perhaps. I never knew a giant that was, but an old family, with traditions, you know. If he'd been the other sort, she'd never have turned him into stone." At this point, Aslan clapped his paws together and called for silence. "Our day's work is not yet over," he said, "and if the witch is to be finally defeated before bedtime, we must find the battle at once." "And join in, I hope, sir," added the largest of the centaurs. "Of course," said Aslan. "And now, those who can't keep up, that is children, dwarfs, and small animals, must ride on the backs of those who can. That is lions, centaurs, unicorns, horses, giants, and eagles. Those who are good with their noses must come in the front with us lions to smell out where the battle might be. Look lively and sort yourselves." And with a great deal of bustle and cheering they did, and the most pleased of the lot was the other lion, who kept running about everywhere, pretending to be very busy, but really in order to say to everyone he met, "Did you hear what he just said? He just said us lions. That means like him and me. Us lions. That's what I like about Aslan. No side, no standoff, selfishness. Us lions. That meant him and me." At least he went on saying this until Aslan had loaded him up with 3 dwarves, 1 dryad, 2 rabbits, and a hedgehog. That's funny. So they're all on his back. That steadied him a bit. When all were ready, it was a big sheepdog who actually helped Aslan most in getting them sorted into their proper order. They set out through the gap in the castle wall. At first, the lions and dogs went nosing about in all directions, but then suddenly one great hound picked up the scent and gave a bay. There was no time lost after that, and soon all the dogs and lions and wolves and other hunting animals were going at full speed, with their noses to the ground, and all the others streaked out for about half a mile behind them, were following as fast as they could. The noise was like an English fox hunt, only better, because every now and then, with the music of the hounds, was mixed the roar of the other lion, and sometimes the far deeper and more awful roar of Aslan himself. Faster and faster they went as the scent became easier and easier to follow. And then, just as they came to the last curve in a narrow, winding valley, Lucy heard above all these noises another noise, a different one, which gave her a queer feeling inside. It was a noise of shouts and shrieks and of clashing of metal against metal. When they came out to the narrow valley, all at once she saw the reason. There stood Peter and Edmund and all the rest of Aslan's army fighting desperately against a crowd of horrible creatures whom she had seen last night, only now in the daylight they looked even stranger and even more evil and more deformed. There also seemed to be far more of them. Peter's army, which had their backs to her, looked terribly few, and there were statues dotted all over the battlefield, so apparently the witch had been using her wand. But she did not seem to be using it right now. She was fighting with her stone knife. It was Peter she was fighting, both of them going at it so hard that Lucy could hardly make out what was happening. She only saw the stone knife and Peter's sword flashing so quickly that they looked like 3 knives and 3 swords. I picture him like a ninja going crazy. The pair were in the center, and on each side the line stretched out. Horrible things were happening wherever she looked. "Off my back, children!" shouted Aslan, and they both tumbled off. And then, with a roar that shook all of Narnia from the western lamppost to the shores of the eastern sea, the great beast flung himself upon the White Witch. Lucy saw her face lifted towards him for 1 second with an expression of terror and amazement. She's like, "Wait a minute, I killed you. What are you doing here?" Then I think now she realizes he really is way more powerful than she is. Then Lion and Witch had rolled over together, but with the witch underneath, and at the same moment all warlike creatures whom Aslan had led from the witch's house rushed madly on the enemy lines. Dwarfs with their battle axes, dogs with their teeth, the giant with his club, and his feet also crushed dozens of the foe. Unicorns and their horns, centaurs with swords and hooves, and Peter's tired army cheered, and the newcomers roared, and the enemy squealed and gibbered until the wood re-echoed with the din of the onset. Ooh, stops there. All right, so the last chapter is called The Hunting of the White Stag. So everybody's fighting. Peter and Edmund are super lucky because they were outnumbered, they were exhausted. And then, here comes Aslan and the crew. Aslan has taken over the fight with the witch, so they're rolling all over each other. I think Peter and the rest of the people kind of fell back, kind of caught their breath, while the new, fresh energy people kind of did their thing. So we'll find out the grand culmination tomorrow. Remember, please make time this week to maybe watch as a family the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movie, probably on Netflix, I hope. It does a great job of following the book. They omit kind of quite a few scenes, but the scenes that they do are pretty accurate, which, you know me, I'm a purist. I like it when they keep it close to the story. So plan on watching that and maybe having a discussion of, did you like the movie better? Did you like the book better? It's always nice when we have a movie to bring it to life. All right, friends, I'm going to go work out and finish writing the tests. And we'll talk to you soon. Don't forget to remind your parents to sign up for a sign-up time for dropping off your textbooks next Tuesday, 8:30 in the morning till 10:15 in the morning. Don't forget, tomorrow after the final reading of the chapter, you'll be taking your Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe forms test. And then Friday, anytime between 9 and 5, you can take your final chapter 8 social studies test with the best Kahoot ever. I saved the best for last at 1 o'clock, both classes. Who will be on the score? What's it called? The winner's board. No, what's it called? I forgot what it's called. Amna is the reigning champ right now. Will she continue as the champ? Who knows? All right, guys. Have a great Wacky Wednesday. Bye.